this is Jessica, and in this video I'm going to be creating an art journal page featuring some of the supplies for the September 2020 Mix Me Inspired box. To begin, I'm taking apart the Jar Jewelry burlap flower. I'm just using my scissors to snip the thread that holds all the pieces together and then pulling out the brown fabric piece. And now I'm using a 4-inch gel plate, and I'm using a brayer to put on a layer of paint and then pressing the flower fabric piece that we cut apart earlier into the center. Now, I didn't have quite enough paint and didn't push it on there very firmly, so it didn't stick the first time, but we won't have any trouble moving forward. So I'm flipping that over and printing that onto a page in my Large Dilutions art journal. And then I'm taking the flower fabric piece off and applying the next layer of paint. Now, all the paints I'm using today are from the Dina Wakley Media Heavy Body Acrylic line. And I'm going to just go through different colors. So this one is a mixture of 2 colors that I put together and then brayered together to put on the gel plate. Now what the little fabric flower is doing is that it's blocking the paint so that I get this image of the flower in the center of every circle. And I'm going to repeat these steps until I have all the colors I want. So next is yellow. Then I'm going to place my flower in the center. And on this circle, I'm going to use a piece of canvas from the DCWV matte stack. And I'm going to use the fabric sheet to make some impressions into the gel plate. But I didn't want it to quite remove as much as it did, so I'm just adding in a little bit more yellow. And then I will print that. So all I did with that canvas matte piece is just add texture within my print. So instead of getting a solid yellow piece, a solid yellow print, I'm going to have a little bit of texture within my print, and also some paint transfer from the earlier color of orange. Now I'm mixing 2 colors here. This is lime and evergreen on my brayer, and I'm just going to brayer that onto the gel plate. Once again, placing the fabric flower in the center, and then using my matte sheet, canvas matte sheet to add some texture to the print. So one thing I want to note here is that it's very important to place the fabric flower down the same side every time, because if you don't, you're going to get a little bit of paint transfer, as you can see, like in the light green one. I didn't do that, and then a little bit of the paint transferred into the center. So if you want those center flowers to be pure white, it's really important to make sure you keep putting the paint side down on the flower. So now I'm doing the aqua circle. And this blended a little bit too much into the green, so I'm just doing another layer of paint before I make my print. And I wasn't really quite sure where I wanted the placement of that one, so you can see me thinking it through about where I want that circle so that the remainder of my colorful circles will fit. So to give you a little bit of inspiration between my idea for this page, I was looking on Pinterest at different kind of blankets that you can crochet. I also like to crochet, so I was looking at patterns for that, and I came across this circle granny square, which is a type of stitch, Afghan, and I was thinking, that is really cool, and I was thinking about it, and then all of a sudden it occurred to me that I had a circle gel plate, and how cool would it be to sort of do my own interpretation of that on an art journal page. So that's where the inspiration came from. So this is a little bit grungy, a little bit 70s rainbow inspired, a little bit crochet inspired. So it's a very loose interpretation, but that is where my idea came from. Now here is where, after all this work, I made a mistake. So I put the paint on with the brayer, as I do every time. And then I'm going to place down the flower, and you're going to see where the mistake happens. So I put the flower down, I make the print with the canvas sheet, and I think, oh, it took away too much paint. I'm going to put a little bit more paint on there, not thinking, hey, you already put the flower on there. So now the flower is full of paint, as you can see, so I thought, oh, no big deal, I'll just pull that off. Well, you're going to see what happens here in half a second of why that was not a good idea. And here we go, the big reveal. Ta-da! No flower. So I thought about this for a second, and I grabbed my white gesso and a brush, and I'm simply going to paint in the flower. Now, is it an exact match to the print make flowers in the other circles? No. Does it matter? Not really, because in the end, it all blended together and you don't really notice it. So this was a way that I could save my page and not have to start over from the beginning, and so I was happy with the results of this. And after I painted in the white gesso flower in the pink-ish circle, I'm also going to put a layer of gesso between all of the circles in the background. So I want the background to be completely white. And I have two reasons for doing this. One, I wanted to have the background be all the same color in case I had some drips or transfers or whatever from previous pages or just little bits that get on the page. So this makes it one even layer. And two, I want to do a removal technique with the Nuvo Sparkle Spray, which you'll see in the next step. And to do that, I need to have gesso, because if I put that spray directly onto the page, it would soak into the paper. So the gesso is going to allow me to lift and move some of it. So that was a two-part reason. Now, having said that, is this gesso coverage perfect? Absolutely not. It's close, but there's some areas where it's a little thicker, a little thinner. If I did get it on the circles, I just wiped it off with my finger. So this isn't perfect coverage, but it works for what I'm about to do. So after shaking up the Nuvo Sparkle Spray, I poured a little bit of it into the container of the gel plate, and I'm going to paint it on with a brush. And then I got the brush wet, and I'm blending it out a little even further, and then using a paper towel to lift some of it. So now I'm going to say a bonus that I discovered as I was doing this. When I went to lift up the wet sparkle spray with my paper towel, the paper towel left mini dots as it picked up the texture from the actual paper towel. Did I know this was going to happen? Absolutely not. Was I ecstatic when it did? Yes. And I did giggle a little bit to myself as I was alone in my studio painting. And then I got super excited and I thought this needs to be everywhere. So you're going to see I'm just going to keep going and putting this all over in between, adding shadowing and getting that bonus dot pattern everywhere in the background. So some areas this is going to be a little bit darker and some it's going to be a little bit lighter depending on how much water and how diluted I let this product get. And also it doesn't pick up on the camera, but there is glitter in the sparkle spray. It's a very, very fine silver glitter. So this is also shimmering in different areas too, which I thought was really pretty. Now, I talked about it earlier about how the gesso coverage wasn't perfect, and you can really see that in the upper left corner, where some areas you can see actually where I missed the gesso and it soaked down into the page, and then others where the gesso was, and when I pushed the paper towel down, it actually lifted it off completely, which I think looks awesome, and it gives it a really worn, grungy texture. So that was part of why I wasn't being super careful with the gesso coverage. If you didn't want that to happen, just be more thorough with the gesso layer and that you'll get more even coat. So I'm continuing along with my accidental paper towel texture technique. And when I'm making these prints with the paper towel, I'm being careful to use a dry area of the paper towel each time so that I'm not transferring product in a place that I don't want it to be. Because this is still wet, the paper towel obviously becomes wet, and I don't want it to get like in the middle of my flower or something. So I'm being careful for that. And I'm so in love with the texture that that paper towel creates. It's just the best. So as I finish the last space between all of the circles, I'm going to just look over this and decide if I have it dark enough in areas or if I want it a little darker, if I want to fix spots. So like, for example, that spot right there, I didn't think it was completely covering the white, so I'm just going to use my brush to paint it in. And I also didn't think this area here that I'm working on was dark enough, so I'm going to add in some more there. So now that this is done, when I was making the gel prints, I overlapped some of them. So it got the color into the actual flower, and I want all these flowers to be white. So I pulled out my trusty white gesso, and I'm going to paint in the flowers that had color into them. So like the purple one in the bottom corner here had a little bit of green, so I'm gessoing that. And then because I don't want there to be some area that's gessoed and some not, I'm just gessoing the whole flower. And this will make sure that when I do my next step to add color to the flowers, that the product will react the same throughout the entire flower instead of soaking into some areas and not in others. So I'm just doing an even layer of gesso through the whole flower. I'm also going to do that same step in the center lime green circle. Once again, just painting in everything. And then I will do that for the dark blue circle as well, because a little bit of green, lime green got into one of those upper petals. So after the gesso is dry, I'm going to go in with scribble sticks. And I'm using a color that's close to the circle to go around the outside of the flower and make some very sketchy lines along the outside of each petal. They're not all the same. Some are a little bit wider, some are a little bit thinner. I am laying down pushing very hard and laying down a lot of pigment though, because I want to be able to blend this out. So I'm pushing very hard so that I get thick, heavy lines of scribble stick in each petal. And I'm going to repeat this step for each flower until they all have the scribble stick colorful lines. Then I'm going to use a wet brush and I'm going to activate all the scribble stick lines with water. Now, the flowers that have gesso painted into them versus the flowers that was just raw paper, the scribble sticks are going to react differently just because they're going to move more on the gesso. So I am using a lighter hand on the flowers with the gesso in them just so that I don't remove all of the scribble stick. And then I'm going to let this dry. Now when I say let this dry, I mean I let this dry. I had lunch, I did some laundry, it's been about 3 hours, and now I'm back. And I'm going to go in with my Jelly Roll black pen. And the reason why I let this dry for so long is that if I had went in too early, I would have ended up ruining my Jelly Roll pen. So the key is let everything dry completely. I probably should have even let it dry longer, but I wanted to finish this. So I'm just going in and I'm outlining all of the flowers with my black Jelly Roll. And then I'm going to go back to the beginning again. So I've done the outline on all of the flowers. And I'm going to go back to the beginning, which is the red one, and I'm going to draw in the center. So I did a small circle, then a little bit bigger circle, then I drew lines, and then I drew tiny circles along the outside of each, on the outside of each of the little lines. And in half a second, I'm going to zoom in because I realize that nobody can really see what I'm doing. So if you just bear with me here, I'm going to zoom in. And now we can see what I'm drawing. So I'm going to repeat these steps for all of the flowers. And I'm also going to go in with a white Jelly Roll pen. And I'm going to fill in the little circles with white jelly rolls so that they pop a little bit, and also the center flower. And I'm going to repeat this step for all the flowers. Now I'm taking more of the Nuvo Sparkle Spray and I added a little bit of water so it was even more fluid. And using my brush, I'm going to tap on it to create lots of different size speckles and spots. Now I grabbed my odds and ends journal because I didn't want to waste the spray. And I laid a piece of burlap on there and then I completely covered it with that same color of Nuvo Sparkle Spray. And what's interesting here is that you can really see the glitter and how it goes picked up on that burlap, so it looks really shimmery. And now I'm going to put a layer of Dina Wakley Media Ultra Thick Gel to glue this down. And that's a perfect adhesive to use when you're doing anything that is really textured. So like burlap works great with that. It will dry and it will not move. Now I went back and I grabbed one of those burlap flowers from the thing that we cut apart earlier, and Tim Holtz Ideology Hex Brad, and I'm putting that in the center of the flower. And then off screen, as I was looking at that flower, I decided it needed a center, so I took a yellow piece from the canvas mat and I cut up a circle and then just glued it together. So I'm sorry that we don't have that on camera, but that's what I did. And now I'm taking a green piece from the same pack and I'm cutting out leaves. So after I cut out the 2 leaves, I'm going to layer those under the burlap flower, as you can see here, to kind of see if I like that, and I do. And now I also have a piece of Dina Wakley Media Collage Words from pack 1. Now I'm not going to tell you how long I sat and fussed with this to decide what positioning I wanted all these elements, but it was much longer than I should have, so we're going to leave it at that. But I decided I liked how this looked in the end, so this is what I'm going with. So I'm just gluing it down, once again with the ultra thick medium. And I put down the piece of collage tissue words first, and then the burlap flower slightly overlapping it. And then I'm lifting a couple of the petals just to tuck in the leaves. And I did it in this order because I wanted to make sure that I liked the position of the flower so then I could put the leaves in accordingly. And because this ultra thick medium has about a 10-minute dry window, I'm able to position things and decide how I like it. So this is the final page, and thank you so much for watching. I'd love to see what you're creating using hashtag #ArtJournalJunction. And be sure to follow us on YouTube so you don't miss out on any of our future videos. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.